All right, we are in chapter 2. Just got into chapter 2, solving equations. We're going to start with one-step equations that you would have looked at last year in 6th grade. Solving one-step equations in one variable by using adding or subtracting. So we're starting small. That being said, we're going to go through really quick. We're going to deal with whole numbers, negative numbers, decimals, fractions, all at once. Because again, it's 8th grade math. And you were in 6th grade math before and did see this in 6th grade math. So, a little bit of vocabulary. Go ahead and fill in. An equation is a mathematical statement that uses two expressions are equal. And that equation means that they're equal. So an equation has an equal sign. We've seen those before. A solution of an equation is the value of that variable. So if you're saying x equals something, what makes the equation true? And we're going to isolate the variable. So we're going to try and get that variable all by itself. And when it's isolated, it appears by itself on one side of the equation and not all on the other side. We'll do some examples. So to isolate the variable, we're going to be using the inverse operation. The inverse operation is the opposite. So the opposite of plus is minus, opposite of times is divide. We're using that inverse operation to undo it. We talked about additive inverse means that they add to 0. So an inverse operation is the opposite. Some examples, which again, I know you've seen before. Well, the hardest part for some of you is going to say, well, I know the answer. Why do I have to show my work? I need you to show your work because this is the very beginning of algebra. Things don't stop here. We don't just say, well, that's the hardest equation we'll ever see. Y minus 8 equals 24. If you can do that, you're set for life. Things get more difficult. This is not the highest math you will see. We're teaching you a process so that when you do see really difficult problems that you can't just look at and go, oh yeah, I know the answer is 5. We will get to these problems later in this chapter. You're going to get to some questions later in this chapter that are very long and difficult. Sorry, my computer is not cooperating. There we go. We're starting with smaller problems. I won't say easy, but I'll say smaller. We're doing smaller problems so we can learn this process so that later on in the chapter, in a couple of weeks, when we have much, much longer, bigger questions, you can do them. Even though you can't just look at it and know the answer. All right, that's my spiel on that. Please do write this down. If we're solving an equation, the work I need to see is that we want to isolate this variable. We want to get y all by itself on one side of the equal sign, all by itself. And to do that, we use the inverse operation. Opposite of minus, plus. And we're going to do the same thing to both sides of that equal sign. I know in the past you've probably drawn that line. Go for it. Feel free to do that. I won't always draw the line. But on both sides of that line, on both sides of the equal sign, we have to keep it balanced. So we add to both sides of that line. We're going to add 8. Now, the 8s do not just disappear. It's not that they just go away, bye-bye, and no more. Negative 8, this is a negative 8. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. But y plus 0, anything plus 0 is just anything. So it doesn't matter what y is. Anything plus 0 is still going to be y. So we don't typically write the 0. But it doesn't disappear. It becomes 0. And that's what we want. We want those numbers to become 0. So y is all by itself. It's isolated. And then 24 plus 8 is going to give us 32. So the variable y is going to be 32 to make that equation true. And we're going to check. You got to check yourself before you wreck yourself. So 32 minus 8, we're going to substitute back in and make sure that it works. 32 minus 8 does in fact give us 24. Check. It works. Look at another one. Again, we're moving quickly through this. 5/16 equals z minus 7/16. So we're going to solve it in the exact same way. I look and see that I want the z by itself, so I want to have z by itself. To get z by itself, I need to do this inverse operation. It's minus 7/16. So I'm going to add 7/16. Okay, that's the inverse operation. And negative 7/16 plus 7/16 is 0. So there'd be nothing over here anymore. It would just be 0. Equals Actually, the same thing to both sides. I have to keep the equation balanced and equal on both sides. It's an equation, so both sides should be equal. 5/16 plus 7/16 is going to give me, I'm going to do it in a color so you can see it, 12/16. And we do need to reduce. Reduce, 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 reuse, recycle. I can divide both 12 and 16 by 2. In fact, I can probably divide them both by 4 even. Really let me here, 4. So you could divide it by 2. That would be fine. I'm going to divide it by 4 because I'm lazy. I'm going to divide by bigger numbers, so I don't have to do it as much. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 3/4 equals z. Do keep the z on the same side that it started on. Please don't flip that around and say z equals 3/4. I know some of you are happy you're doing that, but it will make your life harder later on this chapter. And so keep the z on the same side. If we substitute that back in, we'd have 5/16 should equal 3/4 minus 7/16. Of course, we need to have common denominators, which we know will be 12/16. 12/16 minus 7/16 does give us 5/16. So we were correct. It worked. Check. I want you to try the next 3 on your own. I want you to try the next 3 on your own and see how you do. I'm assuming you pause it. I'm assuming you try it on your own. I'm just going to write the answer. If you did not get the correct answer, make sure that you look at the linked videos. So n should be 8.8. Here, k should equal 0. And here, m should equal 16. If you did not get those 3 answers, make sure that you check the linked video. Watch how to do it. Make sure that you know how to solve the equation and set it up properly. I'm going to go look at this one with you, and then I'll have you try 3 more. We've got -5/11 plus p equals -2/11. They've already given us those common denominators, which is very nice. So say thank you to the computer. Thank you, computer. Yes. If we're solving -5/11 plus p equals -2/11, there's 2 ways to look at this. One way is to say, well, I want p by itself. I want p by itself, and I have to see that it's a plus. So I would subtract. I'm going to subtract -5/11. And that is an accurate way to do this problem. If we do it that way, it looks like a lot of negatives. It's correct. It looks like a lot of negatives. If we do it that way, -5/11 minus -5/11. If you take anything and subtract itself, you're going to get 0. Anything minus itself will always be 0. So -5/11 minus -5/11 will be 0, which is what we want. We want that to be on 0. -2/11 minus -5/11. If we follow our keep, change, change idea, where we keep this the same, change that to a plus, change that to a positive. So we have -2/11 plus a positive 5/11. -2 plus 5 is going to give me 3/11. If you don't like all those negatives floating around, let's think a little bit harder and avoid some negatives. Another way to look at this is to say, well, I want this to be 0. -5/11. I want that to be 0. That's kind of the goal, is to eliminate that number there. Well, if it's a -5/11, I know that -5/11 plus 5/11 will give me 0. So I do the same thing to both sides. Sure enough, -2/11 plus 5/11, 3/11. It works the same way. So if you don't like the minusing of negatives, that just makes your mind go. Think about what you're really trying to do. We want that red circle number there, -5/11. We want that to be 0. So we add, because -5/11 plus 5/11 is 0. So you don't have to follow the rote system every time, always in the inverse operation. That always works. But if you think a little bit harder, you can save yourself some work. I'll let you decide which one works best for you. Try these 3 on your own, pause it, give these 3 a try. I'm assuming you tried it. I'll look at the answers. Again, check the linked videos if you don't get the correct answer. It should be m equals -4.7. It should be z equals 2. And for the last one here, it should be that x equals 44. Again, if you didn't get the correct answer for those three, make sure that you watch the linked videos and see how it's done.